Let's bring you some more information now on the news. Topping the list today, the stay on California's Proposition 8 is going to be lifted next Wednesday. And that means same-sex couples, gay couples, will be able to get married starting that date. That's next Wednesday, so it's 6 days from today. Mathew Staver, he's the founder of the Liberty Counsel, and he joins us now live on the phone. He's against this decision made by this judge. Mr. Staver, thank you for being with us. Let me read to our viewers real quick what we've got. I did a little research on what you'd been saying, and I pulled it out and highlighted it. Can you see this over my shoulder there, Robert? Let me read this to the viewers. Here's what you say, quote, "It is outrageous that Judge Walker refused to stay this ruling. This is a classic example of radical individualism and judicial activism." Then you go on to say down here, "It makes no sense for one person to set aside a state constitutional amendment, radically change the long-standing status quo." It sounds like you believe this judge is wrong, and you will hopefully be able to prove him wrong in court down the line. Explain that to us. Amplify that thought process, if you would.
Well,
Mr.
I think
Staver.
the judge is absolutely wrong. In fact, he hasn't learned the lesson of 2008. That's when the California Supreme Court struck down a previous proposition, Proposition 22, passed in 2000, that had the same language of marriage as one man and one woman. They were asked to stay their opinion because of the disruption it would later cause when the amendment would be ultimately passed, if it was. And in fact, it was in short order. The decision was overturned. And so you had all this chaos ensue in between people getting same-sex marriages and then wondering whether they were legal or not. You're going to have the same thing. This case is up on appeal as it is.
Well, let's just look at the merits of the case in and of itself. I mean, essentially, when you read the original order, the one a week and a half ago, the judge is essentially saying, look, this is a question of equality. What's good for one person has to be good for any other person that's living in the United States. It's that simple. It's no different than being African American or being Hispanic or being anything else. If other people who aren't gay can get married, then gay people should have the right to get married. That's what he's saying. Why do you disagree with that?
No, that's exactly what he's saying. But put this in perspective, since the 1970s when these cases first started, and from 2004 to the present, there have been 45 of such cases. Liberty Counsel has been involved in at least 44 and won 44 of those 45. He is the only judge ever in the history of America to find a federal constitutional right to same-sex marriage. Now, that being the case, he's really out there on a limb. In fact, the Supreme Court has already hinted in a previous ruling that there is no constitutional right under the U.S. Constitution to same-sex marriage. So he's even further out on a limb. That is more compelling reason why he should stay as a decision.
But let's stay with the merits of this. How could there not be a constitutional right for one human being that's guaranteed to another human being?
Well, what you have is a rational basis test, and that means, is this debatable? Is there any rationality in having marriage as one man and one woman? And obviously there is. And if there is, the government wins and Proposition 8 stays effective. And there's a lot of rationality. Procreation obviously only occurs between a man and a woman, whether artificially or naturally. And also there's a lot of research talking about the importance of fathers and mothers to the well-being of children. We all know the idea of fatherless syndrome and its effect on males. Well, same-sex marriage, as a policy matter, says that kids do not need parents of dual gender. They don't need moms and dads.
Well, you know, it's interesting.
A lot of research undermines that proposition.
You know, the judge addressed that in his original finding, and he said it's all hullabaloo, you know, saying that two men are not capable of raising a child. He says, and he addressed it specifically, that simply isn't true, nor is it true that two women can't raise a child, just like a man and a woman could raise a child. How do you differ with him? If you were talking to him instead of me, how would you tell him that he's wrong?
I would say that, you know, just do common sense. Go to a male prison section. Go to the violent offender section. Ask them one question. Where was their dad when they were growing up? They're going to say, by and large, 95% of them, I had no dad. There is a correlation between having a mom and a dad of dual gender with both the children in the household, and science and sociological studies say that. He simply did not cite those studies, and there's plenty of them in all different areas. He never even cited them. He ignored them, and consequently there is rationality. There is legitimate reason why marriage between a man and a woman is valid, and why the people of California and the rest of the people in the country would express it as the ideal human relationship.
Mr. Staver, we thank you, sir, for taking time to call in and join us and share your perspective on this. We appreciate it.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Here on Rick's List.